we're launching the first smart ice bath and cold water therapy app. I think that is what's driving so much growth in this space because there's so much more research coming out. And one of the statistics is that it increases metabolism by 350%. Luteal, I just wouldn't ice bath. And that's because your body is under so much stress already. And also you're much more sensitive to the cold.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Catch Ups in My Kitchen with me, Georgia Simmons, host of the podcast. In my kitchen this week, I am joined by Laura Fullerton, who is the founder of Monk, the smart ice bath company, which is really changing the game for cold water therapy. Now, we've seen a lot about the benefits of cold water therapy online, but if you're anything like me, I was starting to see that then girls should be careful with cold water therapy due to our hormones, our cycles, and all the complexities that go into female health. So I was determined to get someone on the podcast to talk all things cold water and cycle syncing, and the fact that actually for females, it is good to use cold water therapy to elevate our health, but we just have to be careful about when we decide to do it. So I was so excited to speak to Laura today. We dived into her journey with cold water therapy, her journey starting Monk, what Monk is and how it's taking cold water therapy to the next level. I guess the best way to describe it is kind of like the Peloton of cold water therapy. So it kind of guides you through it, as well as looking so gorgeous in your flat, kitchen, home, outside, balcony, wherever you decide to put it. So this episode really is a whole cold water therapy deep dive. If you want to know about the benefits, if you want to know about the pros, the cons, when you should, when you shouldn't, this is the episode for you. I am so excited for you to meet Laura, so let's jump straight in and welcome Laura to the kitchen. Laura, welcome to my kitchen. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Do you mind giving a quick elevator pitch? Who you are, what you do?
Sure. So I'm Laura Fullerton and I'm the founder and CEO of Monk, which is a health tech startup. We're launching the first smart ice bath and cold water therapy app. So as much as I love ice baths, I also just love everything biohacking and health optimization and wellness and fitness. So yeah.
I'm excited to talk about this. I also love all things wellness and I love an ice bath, but also very wary of like being a woman in the space and kind of we have to think about our health in different ways depending on the time of the month. So I'm excited to go into all of this in more detail. We have a quick fire round just to kick things off about all things food.
Ooh.
So what is your favourite restaurant in London?
Ooh, Umu. A really fancy Japanese. I love Japanese food and it is incredible.
Okay, good recommendation. Haven't been to that.
Yeah.
What is your go-to Deliveroo?
Ramen.
Yes.
I only really order Deliveroo if I'm, really burnt out or tired or something, but ramen's my go-to because it feels nourishing but also filling.
Yeah,
I love that.
Agree. Do you have like a go-to destination for ramen?
Yeah, either tonkotsu or Bone Daddies.
They are the top two.
Yeah,
agree. Okay, what is your hangover meal?
Ooh. Again, probably ramen. That's probably, it's probably the only time I really have it.
Yeah.
But also I don't drink much.
Fine.
But when I do,
that's
ramen.
your go-to.
The saviour.
What is your favourite coffee shop?
Oh, that's a good one. Do you know what? Weird answer, but Truth Coffee in Cape Town, because I was just there and it is mind-blowing. They take their coffee seriously.
I was in Cape Town in January and...
Did you go?
I didn't go.
Oh, no. You have to go back just to go. Yeah.
I think I am going to be going back in next January because
perfect.
It's just, everyone seems to be out there.
Yeah.
The lifestyle, the weather, the time difference, everything just worked in our favour. So I was like... Yeah.
I was also there in January and it's the most incredible place. I will be there next January as well.
Okay.
So let's go to Truth Coffee.
Let's go to Truth Coffee. I love that. What food for you is a complete no-no?
Oh, I would say goat's cheese.
Oh, agree.
The devil's food. I just hate it.
Even the smell?
Yeah. Awful. Yeah. I'd say that's the only food that I just cannot really eat.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you. And what is your favourite dish to cook at home?
I'm really boring with what I cook.
Okay.
It's typically steak or, I'd say steak and veg. That's my go-to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to dive straight in with the benefits of cold water therapy because I think Everyone can see it online, everyone's talking about it, there's a lot of noise in the space, but let's kind of dive into the benefits and kind of in the different categories. So let's start with like the mental health benefits of cold water therapy.
Yeah, I think that is what's driving so much growth in this space because there's so much more research coming out. And I think I always look at it in terms of like the short, medium and long-term benefits. So I think the thing that's driving a lot of growth in, especially when it comes to the mental health side of things, are its impacts on dopamine and lots of neurotransmitters. And that's why, you get into the cold and you come out and you have that euphoric boost and like the focus and just that kind of resilience it builds and you feel almost immediately afterwards. And I think that's the thing that initially gets people hooked. And there's so many different pathways that it works on. And interestingly, a lot of the research is linking depression and anxiety to inflammation. And we know how like powerful the cold is as an anti-inflammatory agent. And I think that's really what's kind of fueling the growth there.
I think also like when you get in, there's such a drive to get out.
Yes.
Overcoming that, you feel so mentally strong.
Oh, for sure. Like that's really the challenge, like making yourself stay in there and just override that flight or fight. Because everything in your body is screaming to get out, but you've really got to just like focus and get through it.
Completely. I went to a cold water swim recently with a brand. They do it on like a yearly basis. It's cold water community swim, and it was a really cold day. It was a couple of weeks ago when it was really cold, and we needed to do a length of the pool, and oh my god, like my housemate and I did it together, and I could tell from behind she was kind of thinking, "Can I get out now?" And I was like, "We've got to do a length," and it's so cold that it burns. It's so hot.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, the pain. You just want to get out. But afterwards, you feel like you've accomplished something so big.
Yes.
You feel so strong.
Yeah. And it's a phenomenon called cross-adaptation, because that resilience you build genuinely ripples out into other areas of your life. Because if you can tackle that and you can train your body to be comfortable in the cold or go through something difficult, then, things that happen in your day, like whether it's something at work or in your personal life, it just doesn't seem as such a big a deal.
So true. Immunity benefits. Are there any benefits in terms of immunity?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of research around that area. Again, working on tons of different pathways, but as soon as you get in, you have an immune response. And I always say that it's amazing for building immunity, but if you are sick, then I wouldn't get in. Because if you're sick, your body's already under stress and you don't want to tax it anymore.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. Because if you're like struggling, you're aching, getting into cold. Because I think there is a shock element to your body. So I think we'll go into kind of when not to do it in a minute. But I think there are kind of like do's and don'ts around it. Let's talk about fat loss in terms of, is this a good weight management exercise?
So I'm always the first to say that I would never talk about the cold as a weight loss tool. I think it's a brilliant tool to have in your wider toolbox, but I think when people talk about it purely for fat loss, I don't think that's particularly accurate. Like there's a ton of research, particularly by Susanna Soberg, who's a phenomenal researcher, and she's done a lot into the metabolic effects of the cold. And it burns brown fat, which is fantastic, but I think there's more context that needs to be taken into consideration before you talk about it as a weight loss tool.
Yeah, okay, fine. Because obviously people say obviously shivering burns fat. So if you're getting into an ice bath, you're probably going to be shivering cold and your body's going to be in overdrive to try and like warm up.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess it's not a weight loss method. Yeah. It's just one of the factors that happen whilst you get into an ice bath.
Yeah, absolutely.
This episode is brought to you by Wild Market, the online farmers market where farmers, fishermen, growers, pickers all come together to share the products and produce that they have grown and made. It really is the magic of a farmers market from the comfort of your home wherever you are in the country. If you want to know more about Wild and their journey, Ella, the co-founder, came on Catch Ups in My Kitchen in episode 116. So check that out to hear more. As you guys know, I have been reintroducing a few animal products into my diet after being plant-based for about 6 years. But what's really important to me on my journey is where I get my animal products from. And Wild has been a huge part of that journey for me. For example, I can get fish from Cornwall 2 days after it has been caught, and it really does not get much fresher than that. Wild Market opens on a Friday and closes on a Wednesday, and then it's all delivered to your door in one convenient box on a Friday. So whether you are looking for dairy, meat, fish, pasta, Wild Market has you covered. Go to www.wild.market/mykitchen for £15 off your order. That is wild spelt WYLDE. Then it is .market/mykitchen. I'll add all the details in the show notes. Thank you so much, Wild, for providing a service I'm absolutely obsessed with. Guys, if there's one thing you do this year, you've really got to place an order with Wild. Now let's get back to the episode.
And one of the statistics is that it increases metabolism by 350%. So it absolutely does play a role there. And I think the general accepted rule is that try to end on cold. So if you were doing contrast therapy, as long as you end on cold, that's when your body's doing the hard work to warm you up. Whereas if you get into a sauna, although it feels really nice, your body then doesn't have to do that. So it doesn't have to burn the extra fat in order to warm up.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, is it good to go hot to cold, or is that damaging in any way, going from the two extremes?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's like the ultimate power couple. I love pairing them. There isn't actually any research that looks into them specifically, but Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who is like a leading researcher in this space, she says she leaves it, I think it was about 30 seconds or a minute between the two, just to help your body acclimatize, because it is extreme. You're going from really hot to really cold. But I think by combining them, you are just actually getting the benefits of the hot and the benefits of the cold.
Okay.
And it feels great.
It does. It does feel really good. And you kind of need the hot to take the edge off the cold. And then the shock again, you're like, oh my gosh. But it does feel like you get such a buzz and kind of like adrenaline, as if you're like that feeling that you've just like been on stage, or you've just like gone on a ride and you get that adrenaline rush. I kind of get that same kind of buzz and that same kind of high.
Yeah, it's a high, right?
Yeah, completely. What about muscle recovery? Is there a lot of kind of research in supporting that?
Yeah, so I mean, athletes have been doing it for decades, right? That's why people always associate ice baths with athletes. But obviously now it's becoming more mainstream, particularly for things like, immunity and mental health, like we've spoken about. But yeah, there's a lot of research on muscle recovery. But again, there's nuance to it. So depending on why you were training would depend on when you use it. So a lot of people say if you are predominantly just wanting to build strength and muscle size, then don't do ice baths. But actually you can, but you'd want to leave it like 6 to 8 hours after, so you don't blunt that hormetic response, but then you do kind of, off the tail end of it, you do increase that recovery. But I listened to one of your podcasts, so you're training for a marathon, right?
I am, yes.
So there's a way that you would use it. Either you could use it pre-cooling, like before the marathon, but also you would typically use it shortly after each training session, because it will speed up that recovery. And because you're focused on performance and endurance, it's not about muscle strength and size.
Okay,
but then,
interesting.
Yeah.
I do think that the whole recovery is really interesting. Like I have been having like Epsom salt baths after running, and the way you feel the next day, like I don't feel tired, I don't feel sore, and that's just from using salt. So I can imagine having a cold, like an ice bath after, will be amazing for muscle recovery.
Yeah.
So obviously athletes have been doing this for a long time, and now the noise is spreading and everyone's jumping into cold water baths and ice baths, and everyone's turning the shower to cold. Is it something that everyone should be trialing and should be doing? Or are there some cases where we shouldn't be doing cold water therapy?
I think for most people it's phenomenal. And I think for people that shouldn't be doing it, I mean, there's definitely people, if you've had recent heart surgery and a lot of like contraindications where, you should speak to a medical advisor before. But I think getting started slowly is the perfect way for everyone to test whether it's for them. And unfortunately, I guess one of the downsides to social media is, you see people hacking into frozen over lakes and jumping in. And if you're a complete beginner, you've never done it before, that's generally not a good idea. Or firstly, just because it's going to be too cold, it's going to really shock you, and you're not going to enjoy it. Therefore, you're not going to unlock the benefits. You're not going to want to do it again. And so it is, cold is a really powerful tool, but it needs to be treated with respect. And I think that's what people don't understand, is really how to use it safely or effectively.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And what about trialing it with turning the shower cold? Because I almost find it easier going into an ice bath than turning my shower cold.
Yes.
I don't enjoy that at all.
Yeah.
But are the benefits similar?
similar, but they are greater in the ice bath because obviously you're completely submerged. And I hear that all the time. And I also completely agree. In the shower, there's something about it. Obviously, it's just sprinkling down, hitting you kind of everywhere. And you can always like dodge it like the Matrix. Whereas when you get an ice bath, it hits you in the face like you're in. And for me, it's also a greater mental challenge when you get into an ice bath.
Agree.
But it is a fantastic way for people to get started.
Okay. And how often would someone ice bath if they had their own? So we'll go into Monk and like what you guys have created. But if you have your own ice bath, how often would someone tend to use that? Is it something that you could practice every day, or is it something that you would do like a couple of times a week?
Yeah. So some of the popular research from actually Susanna Soberg, she says that the sweet spot is 11 minutes a week. And that could be broken up into, multiple chunks of like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And I think it's a hard question to answer because there's a lot of nuance, because it's so personalized. Because if you were a beginner, you might just start at 30 seconds and slowly build your way up. And females and males should definitely use it differently. Like I'd never recommend a female to be doing it every day, particularly if they have a natural cycle, you'd want to tailor it to different phases of that. But I would say, somewhere between 2 to 4 times a week typically is a really great time frame.
Okay. And now let's get into females and females ice bathing, because at one moment I'm seeing everyone promoting ice baths, and the next minute I'm seeing people say online, women shouldn't be ice bathing. It's not good for your hormones and your cycles and all of that. But let's talk about cycle syncing and ice bathing and when it's good and when you shouldn't be. Let's get into this.
Yes, I love this topic area because like you, I see it online, like women shouldn't do this, but it's the same when people talk about HIIT, they say women shouldn't do it, when actually it's great to do, but like during a certain phase.
Yeah.
So when it comes to ice baths, I look at the cycle and break it down into, really you've got, follicular, which starts with your period and goes up until ovulation. And then after ovulation, you have luteal, which takes you up until your period starts. And I kind of break down luteal into like early and late luteal, purely when talking about ice baths. So during your period, your hormones are at their lowest, or at least like just before your period, they're at their lowest. And that really, like late luteal, I just wouldn't ice bath. And that's because your body is under so much stress already. And also you're much more sensitive to the cold. So it, like going in the same temperature will just feel a lot harder. Mm-hmm. And I think it's at that point where the benefits could be counterintuitive. And that's where I would just turn to, even like I wouldn't weight train really during that phase. I'd be doing more stretching and breath work and just much, tapping into that more holistic side of things. Mm-hmm. And then as I kind of come towards the end of my period, that's an amazing time to start bringing in ice baths again, because that's when your hormones are starting to rise. Mm-hmm. And then ovulation, people talk about this like the power phase. It's when I feel amazing, and that is the time where you have heightened thermogenesis, like you're not as sensitive to the cold. So that's the time to really kind of go for it. If you want to do longer plunges or slightly colder plunges, like that's like the perfect time window. And interestingly, Dr. Stacey Sims, she talked about a pilot study they did, and they took females with severe endometriosis and they got them plunging for 10 days around that ovulation window. And within 3 menstrual cycles, their symptoms were almost non-existent, which is wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So again, it comes to timing. And that's why I think it's almost dangerous when people say women shouldn't cold plunge or you shouldn't do this, when there's so much nuance to it, and actually learning how to use it effectively, like you can unlock phenomenal benefits.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be like a we shouldn't. It's more like we should, but let's research into when we should.
Yes.
Rather than like men could probably just do it whenever in the month, whereas we need to be a bit more careful on our timings. But that makes a lot of sense. And I think it probably, like you say, it probably adds an element of power to our overall health rather than like detrimenting it.
For sure.
So I'm guessing, let's talk about kind of Monk and what you guys have kind of established with the smart ice bath, because I think this is so cool. Because you can now link, for example, if you are tracking your cycles, this is something that you could, am I right in saying, pair with the ice bath, so it helps you track. So let's like go into a bit of the tech side, because I feel like there is a lot of tech element to this. Yeah.
Well, I guess just to frame it in the context of what we're trying to solve is that, people don't know how to use it safely or effectively. And as we've talked about, it can be phenomenal, like when you use it correctly. And also people just love wearables and data. And it's so fascinating when you learn the impact that it actually has on your body. And so, the Monk app, which is a companion app to the bath. It syncs up with it. You can sync your wearables. So to start, there's about 20 wearables we integrate with, like Whoop and Aura, and we don't yet integrate with the cycle tracking apps, but I'm really excited for us to do that, because then we can be much more responsive and tell people when they should and shouldn't, or like recommend when they should or shouldn't, back off or embrace it more.
That's amazing. I think there is a massive rise in people wearing wearables. I'd love to touch on like your experience with ice bathing and wearables, and like how you've kind of come to starting Monk. When did you start your kind of ice cold water therapy journey, and when did you have the idea for Monk, and how have you kind of like changed your relationship with cold water therapy through researching Monk and starting it?
Yeah, so I got invited to this breathwork and ice bath workshop about 4 or 5 years ago, and I went along thinking, I'm just going to skip the ice bath bit, because I've always hated being cold. So to me, it sounded like a terrible idea. I was like, I don't know why I'd want to do this or why anyone wants to do it. Yeah. But I've always been, very much into health, and I do a lot of the other kind of biohacks. And anyway, I got bullied into doing this ice bath, and it was only a few hours afterwards where I remember thinking, like, why do I feel so good? And I just had this clarity and this, I guess it was like this calm but kind of euphoric energy. And at the time I was running a previous business, I'm a stressed out founder. And so just having that clarity was incredible. And I just wanted more of it. And so that really kick-started my journey into using the cold. But the problem I had was that it was actually really inaccessible, which I know sounds silly because it's cold water, it comes out of your tap, but in summer it's not cold enough. And I bought so many bags of ice to put into my bath at home. I used frozen over like horse water troughs. I went to Hampstead Heath ponds, and like I remember breaking in at night during lockdown. Unfortunately, I got sick because it turned out the water was contaminated. There was E. coli, which is actually why it was closed, not because of COVID. So I was doing all these things just to try and get my fix. And I just remember thinking, why is it so hard to do something so good for my health? And then I nearly joined the thousands and thousands of people making their own DIY chest freezers. And I started going down this rabbit hole, and it was just so complex. And it got to the point where I just thought I just need to do it myself. And that really was the catalyst, behind Monk.
I love it. Like you found a pain point, and you're now trying to find an answer for it. And I think you're right. Like, also, I do think, if you're having something in your home, it needs to look great. And I think Monk also looks so cool.
Oh, thank you.
And something you'd want to have like in your house, or on your balcony, or wherever you kind of put it. Mm-hmm. So then why the smart tech element? Because I think you could have just launched an ice bath as is. Yeah. But why the tech?
Yeah. So it would have been much simpler if we launched an ice bath as is. I think being a biohacker myself, I love the data, and just seeing people use it in the wrong way, it made me think that's the problem we're really trying to solve, is to teach people how to use it safely and effectively. And I guess Monk it's like comparing a stationary bike to a Peloton. When you've got the instructors and the music, and it's just this really different immersive experience. That's what we've recreated in Monk. So we have guided plunges. So, there's ones for muscle recovery, there's ones for morning awakening or anxiety reset. So you can follow along with this like amazing, audioscapes and a voice saying to you like, right, you're 30 seconds in, this is what's happening in your body. And it changes the experience.
I think that's really good. And I also think guided is key, because again, when you get in, you want to get out so quickly.
Yes,
it's like we need to be told where we are, how it's going.
Yeah.
Ease into it.
Yeah.
No, I love that. So how has the journey been to creating it? Like you mentioned, we were speaking earlier, that it's been kind of 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think the space has changed so much and developed in your favor over these 3 years. But how has it been, and how has the space evolved from your perspective?
It's been a wild journey. I remember when we set out, I was thinking we could create, develop and bring this product to market within 9 months. And a couple of my investors who have experience in hardware were saying, look, however long you think it's going to take, triple the timeline and double the cost. And I was like, nah, that's never going to happen to us. And it is exactly what happened to us. Turns out that creating like a hardware product that has, firmware and software that all has to talk to each other, it's pretty complicated. And so we have had so many highs and lows, but I'm so excited now because after 3 years of product development, we're finally there. And I feel like now we're at the start line, not the finish line. Like now we're ready to go.
No, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about biohacking. Let's go into this in a bit more detail. For those listening who are like, what's biohacking? Can you explain what biohacking means and how people can use it with cold water therapy?
Yeah, so I think the accepted definition of biohacking is taking control of the environment inside and outside of you. So really, I mean, it's, in a way, it's just, for me anyway, it's living a much healthier lifestyle. So it's living in line with my infradian rhythm. So essentially your menstrual cycle. And, that's not just tailoring cold, but that's tailoring fitness and nutrition and everything around that. I mean, like I said, I'm a bit of a data geek, so I love doing blood work and just figuring out what's actually going on in my body. And then, I mean, I always take a food first approach, but if there's any, things I need to correct, it's usually doing that in terms of diet, maybe supplements. And a lot of it for me it's really natural. I guess it's trying to recreate a natural environment in what is now an unnatural world. So, whether that's using red light at night and blue blocking glasses and making sure you get, morning sunlight, a lot of the stuff that people like Huberman preach.
Yeah. It is so funny how we're doing all these extreme things because we now live in such an unnatural world.
Yeah.
But I do see the purpose in it and I do see the benefits in it for sure. And do you kind of habit stack anything with ice bathing or cold water therapy? So I know there's like meditation elements, breathwork elements.
Yeah.
Do you kind of do any of this when you're going through cold water therapy?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do breath work and visualization. I guess the thing that's really important to note with breath work is that I would never do the really extreme kind of like hyperventilative breath work like that Wim Hof preaches, which I love, but just not pairing anywhere near the cold.
Yeah.
I want to do much more like down regulating breath work that brings you into more of a parasympathetic state. And that's also what we do with a lot of the programs in the app. But there's one thing I've been testing at the moment, which is really working for me. It's going to sound really bizarre, but what I'll do is take a situation or something that's like really stressing me out, and I will think about it as I'm getting into the cold. And I'm almost visualizing overcoming it, like how I'm making myself stay in the cold. I'm kind of using that to think about I'm dealing with this problem. And it just, it really works for me. So I play around a lot with things like that.
That's kind of like manifestation in a way.
Yeah.
That's really cool because everyone always says that athletes or professional people in sport use that. Like they can picture them, visualize themselves like scoring the goal or like doing the tackle or like whatever and then they keep like playing that situation in their head and then they'll do it. And I guess that's kind of similar. So when you're getting in, you're like overcoming a situation.
Yeah.
And it works. Okay, that's super interesting. And where do you think this kind of cold water therapy scene is going? Because I do feel like we are still at the very early stages where people might be like jumping into a cold pool or like, I don't know, saunaing and getting out and like having a cold shower. And like people are playing around with it. But I do feel like we are at the early stages. So where do you think it's kind of going, this space?
I see a world where cold water therapy is becoming as normalized as breath work or meditation is today. I think, I can imagine bankers, rather than, going to the pub at lunchtime, they'll just have a quick dip to renew their focus. And rather than people going to bars and nightclubs, they're doing more sauna and cold plunge parties. And it's just going to become so normalized.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing it in so many other areas of health as well. It's becoming cool to be healthy. And I just see it becoming such an integral part of people's lives.
I think for sure. And I think the feeling that you get afterwards, as we've touched on already, with the extreme focus, clarity, like mental health benefits, immunity, like it's kind of a no-brainer. Like why it wouldn't become more normalized. Like people try and find this high, people try and find this clarity, people want coffee for that extra focus. Whereas you can get that just from going through cold water therapy.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing. And I do think that obviously the off-putting part is like, it's cold.
It's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. But I think, everyone always says that so much growth happens from uncomfort.
Yeah.
And I think that can become quite addictive.
Yeah.
Would you say that cold water therapy can be addictive? Like, have you had moments where you're like, oh my God, this is just so addictive. I am now obsessed.
I definitely feel obsessed, but I can't say I'm addicted to it. I think there are people that do kind of, would tap into that addiction phase, but I haven't really noticed it myself.
I guess because you're quite aware of like your own personal health and like where you are.
Yeah.
Maybe the addiction is not there because you've got all the data to support when you should be doing it and when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But how do you wear or use your wearables to support your health? Because I feel like this is a big part of Monk, and like using wearables to kind of support the whole thing. How do you use yours?
So it's a really interesting question, because I feel like when you talk to people about wearables, so many people are like, I hate them, you shouldn't use them to dictate how you feel. But I think it's such a personal thing, right? Like, I don't wake up in the morning and check how I slept to I figure out how I should feel that day. But where I get huge benefit from them is, I've used, say for example, Aura, I've used for years, I think since like 2017 or something. So I've got an amazing baseline. So if I wanted to test a new sleep supplement or something, then you can actually see the impact of it. And with cold water therapy, I think, I believe in it. It's such a phenomenal tool, and I just want us to prove through data at scale that it's a practice worth everyone's attention. And as more and more research is being done, it's only going to go more mainstream, which is amazing. But I think when people can just see for themselves how it impacts their health.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I have a Whoop and an Aura.
I was about to say, you're double parked. So can we talk about this?
So it's because I find Whoop far better for fitness.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of my goals this year is to increase my VO2 max. And so for fitness, it's so much better than Aura, but I find Aura better for sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. You're a data queen. I love this. I love this. Let's talk about your overall health. Like, what does your health look like to you? Like, what do you practice? What do you love? Like, obviously we've touched on cold water therapy, and that's a massive part of your health and wellness rituals. But like, what are your other kind of health and wellness rituals that you love?
Ooh. Do you know what? I always find it hard to answer, because I think I've made just health my lifestyle, I guess. Some of the things that are really important to me are exercise. So I love strength training, and more like gymnastic strength training.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, but for about 10 years, it's been my goal to get like a really good handstand and a muscle up.
Okay.
But I haven't consistently practiced for that. So shock, I haven't actually got there. But that's still on the cards.
Yeah.
Although recently I've been really inspired by some of the things Peter Attia is talking about. And so when he's talking a lot about, VO2 max and grip strength. So I've got a group of friends, and we've got some challenges for the end of the year. So that I've got some like good fitness goals to hit.
Nice.
And I guess I support that with sauna. I do a lot of sauna as well.
Yeah.
I'm really happy because my partner has just got a sauna in his garden.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, which is so good.
I was just about to say, what saunas do you recommend in terms of at home? Like, obviously I'm here in a flat, and like I would love to have a sauna pod and an ice bath pod.
Yeah.
But I have a sauna in the gym, so I can use that then.
Yeah.
But I haven't obviously got an ice bath. With Monk, can you put it, is it an inside?
Yes, you can have it indoors or outdoors. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also I saw that it's self-cleaning. Is that right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So it's got ozone sanitization, which has become the gold standard for cleaning cold water. So I believe actually a lot of the Olympic swimming pools have now switched to it rather than chlorine. Because it was really important that I just didn't want to have chemicals like chlorine in the water. I just don't think you need that on your skin.
No.
Whereas ozone, it's more potent, but it's completely natural.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you fill it up with water, or do you fill it up with ice?
Yeah, you fill it up with water, and then you can just set it to whatever temperature between 3 to 16 degrees. And off you go. It will just keep it at that temperature.
Okay. And when can someone buy Monk? When is purchase time? Is it available to buy now?
Yeah, it's available to buy now. Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, and actually as of early March, we would have fulfilled 90% of our pre-orders, which is really exciting.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's finally coming to life.
That is so exciting. Honestly, I think that this is a space that we're going to be seeing a lot more of. And I think to be able to make it that accessible and also guided is great, because it just takes the complexity out of it and also helps you every step of the way, which I think is definitely necessary. Thank you so much. We have a final question, which I've changed as of recently. For the last 3 years, I've had the same final question. But as of this episode, I'm changing it to a
guinea pig.
A guinea pig. It's going to be a what's in your bag. So do you mind sharing what's in your bag? Do you have your bag near you?
I do. So I usually have biltong with me.
Okay, so you are a red meat. You are a meat.
Oh yeah, predominantly animal based. I mean, a few boring things. I have my MacBook.
Yeah,
because,
essential.
Can't go anywhere. I have a hat.
Yeah, because it's cold.
It is cold.
Yeah.
Do you know what? This is actually going to be a very boring reveal. I have a bikini because I'm always prepared if I need to jump in a sauna or an ice bath.
No, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So on brand.
Yeah, it's my favourite bikini from Away That Day.
I love this.
And then I have a bag which has some supplements in.
Nice. Good.
Yeah, molecular hydrogen, methylene blue.
Oh wow,
Some
I haven't
electrolytes as well.
I haven't heard of any of those.
Oh really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we need to chat. They're
We
great,
need to
particularly
chat.
for flying.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing.
And then I just have my purse, an umbrella, a charger. Mm-hmm. That's
it.
today.
The bikini is the highlight, I think. Laura, thank you so much for coming on. I really have been interested in kind of hearing more about cold water for females, and I think you've kind of just added a lot of clarity on the fact that we can use cold water therapy to our advantage, but just kind of being particular on when we ice bath rather than not ice bathing.
Yes.
It's been like, yeah, that is key. And I think that's probably the same with a lot of things with female health.
Yeah.
I think if we're not tracking our cycles, we probably should be.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I learned so much from Laura, and I hope you guys did too. Next week, we are joined by the gorgeous Victoria from Empower Periods, talking all things periods. As it says in the title, we are talking about how bad periods aren't normal and how it's such a taboo topic, and also how 1 in 4 females actually know about their own health, which is kind of wild. So if you're interested in learning about periods and your own female health, make sure you click that subscribe button so you don't miss the episode. See you again next week.